Test, test. Thank you, Judy. You know, it's kind of interesting because one of the things that, you know, as I was getting ready to come to the conference, Judy said that I've been in academic technology now for 20 plus years, but this is actually my 28th consecutive ICE conference that I've been at, because before I was on the education side, I was working with one of the Apple dealers. And so we would consistently set up in the vendor area. So I know the Mega Center really, really well within there. And so it's my honor to be back here today to talk to you about something that has become very passionate, that I've become very passionate about, and something that I think is really, really important as we take a look at the ways that technology can amplify and leverage what our students and what our learners are able to do. And we want to talk about this in terms of a general learners. However, I do want to give you a sense of what I'm missing today. Because, you know, one of the things I did not know is that today is an important day back at my school. Today is Go Texan Day. This evening marks the opening of the Houston Rodeo and Livestock Show, which is going to be running for the next 18 days. And at about this point in time, I can hear the traffic reports on the radio about the tie-ups downtown as they're literally herding the cattle down to the rodeo so that we can open it up later this afternoon. So this is my head of school, the assistant head of school. These are my bosses. They are getting ready for Go Texan Day. I'm also honored to be back at the ICE conference because the ICE conference has always marked an opportunity for me to transform myself. And I'm hoping that some of the information that I share with you today gives you the opportunity to have similar transformations. So in 2008, I was a spotlight speaker. And at that point in time, the transformation that I was personally making was one to become a connected educator. And so at that particular conference, I did sessions on the power of Twitter. I did sessions on how to create global connections, because that was where I was at that particular point in time. And if we fast forward to today, ICE 2015, and I see that I have a typo. I always have typos. I always miss the little details. But this really marks and is a story of a journey. It's a three-part story of the journey that I've taken, and it's the transformation to Vinnie 4.0, right? Because we're constantly changing and we're constantly moving. So I want to talk a little bit about the journey that I've undertaken, why I've gotten to this exact point in this location today. The first thing I have to do is I have to thank my parents, my grandparents, and my extended family. I happened to grow up in the Rust Belt. When I was born in Pittsburgh. We moved to Chicago in the 60s. We moved back to Pittsburgh. We moved up to Detroit. We moved to Northwest Indiana, and then we moved to Chicago, right? And growing up, I saw a lot of decline in manufacturing. And all of my grandfathers and my father, my two grandfathers worked in the mill. One worked at Homestead Works at U.S. Steel. The other worked at Alcoa. My father, his second job, worked as a carpenter. He was always going out. And one of the things that my father started very early with me is he started providing me different tools. Every year for Christmas, he would provide a new, different tool. And I can remember at the time that I was 14 years old, and my father handed me a set of metric wrenches. And I said to my father, "Dad, why did you give me metric wrenches? All of the nuts that I'm trying to open are standard size." He said, "Trust me, you'll need this someday." And I can tell you now, with the new cars, I am so thankful, and I use that every time. And my father has passed away a number of years ago, but every time that I pull that particular set of wrenches out to fix something on my Volvo, I am forever grateful for the opportunities that he gave me to learn, to work alongside with him, to really learn and build with my hands, not just with the computers, because computers really didn't exist at that particular point. The other gift that I got from him is the funny star-shaped screwdriver. "Geez, Dad, what will I ever need this star-shaped screwdriver?" Now I can tell you that the Torx screwdriver is one of my best friends. Let's fast forward. In the late 1990s, one of the things that I absolutely enjoy is I absolutely enjoy going to bookstores. And I enjoy going to the libraries, and I enjoy going through the new books. And there was a book in the library that I saw in the new book section. It's a beautiful coffee table book called Inventing Kindergarten. And I checked this book on out. It is available at the Wilmette Library. It's still there on the shelf today, as of about 20 minutes ago. I did check. So some of you, one of you, whoever's first, to go ahead and put your reserve in, you can get the book tomorrow. But this talked about the invention of kindergarten and Frederick Froebel and, the 20 gifts. And, think about the gifts that my parents gave me and my grandparents and the experiences that I've had. And this book really was profound because it really talks about us stopping and thinking and making and doing and really involving ourselves within our lives. And as computers have become easier to use, simpler, out-of-the-box experience, we open it up, it works. No longer is there that joy and wonder of, geez, I want to use a computer. I have to put it together. Geez, if I want to use a computer, I need to learn how to program it to tell it what to do. And so our students are growing up today with these consumer mentalities. I get this, I do something with it, but I really don't necessarily understand how it works, why it works. We're going to fast forward again to another 20 years. And this was a TED Talk that came out in 2011. Dale Doherty was talking about why we are all makers. And again, having grown up in the Rust Belt during the industrial decline, this was a really refreshing message because a number of my friends did go from high school and began to work on the lines. I have two cousins, one who is currently owner of a repair shop and service station, the other one who's an airplane mechanic. We all worked with our hands. And this really got me back to thinking about, geez, with the way that the technologies have been changing, that we can do some really, really neat things. And in the succeeding 4 years that have occurred, we can do more and more. And what this has led me to is that, I wasn't quite ready to process and put this into action. But 2 years ago, when I was hired by Quest, we had a situation. And the situation that we had is that we had a computer lab which had the most aged equipment in the school. And instead of just simply saying, hey, let's just swap out the old hardware and bring in the new hardware and do the same thing as we have, I asked the question. I planted the seed. What if we were to rethink how we did this space? What if we were to think about what opportunities that we could provide for our students, not just to learn how to use basic office apps and things, but really give them a studio and a workshop that would enable them to explore passions and to do some other different things. And luckily for me, and fortunate as part of that transformation process, the administration bought into the idea. We put it out to the parents. Parents overwhelmed us with support. And what we were able to do is we were able to create a 625 square foot makerspace. In that space, we were able to equip it with 3D printers and laser cutters and hand tools and computers and electronics and components and acrylic and fabric and a green screen. And we provided opportunities for students to begin to do some of the work that I dreamed about, to return back to that making with our hands so that we can begin to design, we can think about and take a look at the world around us, find and identify problems that exist, and begin to prototype those solutions for those problems. It enables us to have students to take ideas that they have in their head, oftentimes brilliant, wonderful ideas, but they don't know how to take it out of their head and take that idea through their arms and out through their fingers to make something tangible. And so we wanted to provide a space, a safe place where they could begin to experiment. We wanted to create, and we created a space where students have the opportunity to explore, to work somewhat unstructured. Everyone was working on different projects. People were not working all on the same project with the same goal and the same end in mind. Because so much of their lives are being structured, and they're structured by all of the rules. We take them to sports now. It's not like when I was growing up. We would go outside and we would play and we would run and we would have all these great experiences, cross-age, we would learn from each other. And now, most kids who are today, they go through and it's organized sports, organized by adults and run by adults, with adults setting the rules, and the kids don't have a chance to experiment and to find out about themselves. If you want to find out a little bit of the background behind the space and things, my co-teacher at the time, Cheryl Peterson, and I did create a K12 Online Conference presentation about creating a maker mindset, which you can access at this link. It is up and it's available to you. It's about 18 minutes. And again, if you're looking to have and bring this to your administration or to your principal about why you want to bring some of these various different aspects into your experiences, this is a really, I think, a good resource for you to get the seeds on how we began to do this. So this session is entitled The Year of Living Dangerously, because many times I felt like an air traffic controller. Other times I felt as though I was on a trapeze flying without a safety net. It was, in the 20 years of my professional career, the most exhilarating and the most exciting time of my life, because I never knew what the challenge, what the problem, what the experience was going to be, what the students would be teaching me. And I can tell you, I learned as much from them as they learned from me in that particular space. So there are 4 items and 4 lessons that I learned in working in that space that have, again, helped form my ideas, who I am, and what I'm doing at this particular time. The theme of this conference is making a difference. And a lot of the focus has been around making and the maker movement. We've had the opportunity to meet and work with, and hopefully some of you got to interact with super awesome Sylvia. And some of you had the opportunity to meet and experience Sylvia Martinez. and just begin to take a look. Hopefully some of you, and I know that there are a few faces, had an opportunity to wander through the Maker Playground and see some of the various different tools. But the first thing that I want all of us to remember is that this idea of the Maker movement, and when people talk about maker spaces, the thing that I want you to take away from this conference and take back to your schools is that making is not a thing, it's not a place, it's not a stock set of tools. It is a mindset. We want to develop a mindset within our children to take risks, to go ahead and to explore, to be vulnerable, to build, to fail. We celebrate the failures. We want to acknowledge, and we want to celebrate the failures only if there's iteration and growth as part of it. So it's not this place, and it's not tied to a specific subject. It's not tied to STEM. It can be really tied into anything and everything that you want. Again, it's a mindset, and it's a set of items that we provide for our students in order to make them to have the opportunities. So now that we understand, and hopefully that we can agree upon the fact that making is a mindset, what are the other lessons that I learned? Well, there are 3 really big lessons that I learned. The first of which is that it's really important, and I'm sure that Sylvia Martinez shared this. We want to make sure that in those particular spaces and with those experiences, we want it to be more about the learner and the student than it is about us as the teacher. And I absolutely love and lock into this quote by Seymour Papert. And it's been something that, again, one of the reasons that the Maker movement has resonated with me is this particular quote. That our role as a teacher is to create the conditions for invention rather than provide them ready-made knowledge. Throughout my career, I've always tried to build my classroom around the concept of mastery, and I taught computer science, and I taught science and math and engineering. We want mastery of skills. It's about the process that they go through to get at it. It's not about the end. The end is important, and it's good to have a sense of where we're going to be. But the thing that I learned most is that it requires a vulnerability. And it required me to be completely vulnerable with students where they had an idea and they had a question. And my go-to line throughout the course of the year, and still remains, and it has been for a long time, I don't know. Let's see if we can figure it out. And then we take a look and we try to create the framework so they'd have the opportunity to begin to explore, and we'd explore together, and we'd research, and they'd find out some things and I'd find out some things, and we'd get together and we would put our heads together and we'd share ideas and we'd test them, and we would find out what worked and what didn't work, and we had the opportunity to loop back, and we had the ability to go at this time and time again. It goes back to, when I was teaching an AP computer science curriculum, there's a lot of soft skills that I wanted students to learn. One of them, especially that was a high school level course, typically sophomores, juniors, and seniors that were taking that course. And at the beginning of each semester, I gave them the entire list of projects that they had to complete during that semester. And if there was a student who had an opportunity to knock it off in 3 weeks, great. Because they were busy. They had other things going on in their lives. And I wanted them to have that opportunity to develop mastery. And again, a lot of that we bring on into these maker spaces. We want them to have that mindset to continue to grow, to continue to push, and not be satisfied with where we're at, to continue to look for ways that we can enhance and we can change our lives. The second big lesson that I learned is that flexible plus adaptable equals an explosion of activities. In the space, we purposefully made the decision to put furniture that was modifiable and adaptable. We had flip tables and desks that moved. We had chairs that moved. And the biggest thing that we had to develop in ourselves again, going back to that last one, to allow students to have the opportunity to build the space that they felt that they needed in order to build the project or to do the work that they needed to do. It wasn't about me needing to put together tables and force collaboration amongst various different students. It was more important for them to come in that particular day to decide whether they wanted to work in a collaborative space or whether they needed to ponder and to think and to work individually to kind of work through an idea. And they needed to have some space to sit off in the corner and work by themselves. And it was okay. And it was this interaction and allowing the students to manipulate the environment to fit their needs, which was really, really mind-opening. I mean, it really allowed for some great collaboration. And I was really fortunate that last year that we had the ability to do some mixing of the classes, so that one of the challenges that we had was schedule. And we tried to put this on into our schedule. And what we ended up doing is we ended up being able to have 3 groups of students and split the students 3 ways. The first way that we split it was based upon their math and science placements. So we would have our groupings. The second time that we would meet them, it was based upon their language placements. So again, we would have a reshuffling of the students. And the third way that we got the students was by gender. So we had all the boys at one time and all the girls. Now, what that provided was a condition that made us think about our direct instruction and how we were going to do direct instruction, because each of the 3 groupings was completely different, and I never had the same students in the same sequencing. Again, we need to provide that opportunity for that flexibility, and I can tell you it was an absolute joy. One of the things that I really enjoyed was working with the group of girls at the end of the day on Thursday, and you could tell when they were really engaged, because when those girls were engaged doing whatever project that they were working on, they were all singing. It was a community sing-along, and they were singing the various different choir songs that they had learned earlier today, and it was just absolutely wonderful to have this joy and this passion to walk within. Now, we talk about the joy and the passion and the curiosity. And this was lesson 3 that we learned. We wanted to make sure that learners, when they walked into the space, got an opportunity to readdress and refine their inner kindergartner. Because when a student comes to kindergarten, they are just full of wonder and amazement. They'll ask all kinds of questions. They'll ask, about this, and they'll, flit from table to table and center to center and activity and project. And, I remember, just watching with joy, dropping my youngest daughter off, who's currently a freshman at the University of Arizona. The minute she would hit the door in kindergarten, it was a straight beeline to the dress-up table, right, and to the dress-up corner. And, no inhibitions at all. Boy, as we're hitting the door and we're racing to that dress-up table, I know this is being live streamed. I hope she's not watching, but, clothes would be shed and she'd be, racing to put whatever on. And, she was just joyous about that. But if we watch what has occurred and what occurs with students, when we hit the 3rd and 4th grade, students begin to learn how to play the game of school. They begin to ask really important questions, at least in their minds. Am I doing this right? Is this going to be on the test? Why do I have to learn this? What's really sad is that game of school continues to the middle grades, somewhere in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Oftentimes, instead of the questions, we begin to hear statements. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at building. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at writing. And this is really, really sad, that they've lost that joy and wonder and that ability to say, hey, you know what? I may not be good at this, but I'm going to give it a try. I can personally say that I am not a good writer, But that doesn't stop me from trying to write and add things to my blog, which I appreciate the fact that with the move, I really haven't touched since July. But that's okay. I sit and I work through that. And so that we do this. So, this is a picture from the workshop that I did on Tuesday here at the conference. And this is the picture of 35 teachers rediscovering their inner kindergartner. They're working at various different centers. They had the opportunity to focus and work and their attention on what it is that they want. And, there were some people who had some absolutely glorious failures, right? They had spent an hour and a half. That's the second time that we've had that happen. But they had spent about an hour sewing soft circuits to get LED lights on in, and when they put the snap together, it didn't light up. And were they discouraged? A little bit. But they came in with the mindset, well, that's okay. I'm going to take this home. I don't have time to deal with this now. I'm frustrated. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to let it go, and I'm going to come back at this at a later point in time. And so, just absolutely joyous. What happens when we get out of their way, we allow them the space and the time to really begin to do. And again, it was just wondrous to see folks cycling through the Maker Playground and touching things and not being afraid to doing this. So this is, the things that we've learned in this year of living dangerously. So now I want to talk about, and I want to shift the conversation just a little bit, that you all might be saying, yes, hallelujah, I'm ready. I'm ready to make the step and change myself. So the big question now becomes, either I'm ready to do this myself, I'm ready to take this into my classroom, I want my entire school to jump on board, or hopefully let's get the district involved and let's do this across all of our different schools. So the big question that many of you will come to at the next is, well, how can I get started? How can I begin to implement and create this maker mindset in our schools? So I've got this and I've broken it down because we're all looking for that magic recipe. And as much as I don't like recipes and I don't like processes and I don't like end results, I'm going to conform. And I'm going to conform and I'm going to give you the 4 steps that I believe will help you move to that place where you can begin to implement this as you leave today and go back to your classrooms next week. So step 1, and this is the most critical ingredient in this particular recipe. You need to find someone who has a willingness to learn, to relearn, unlearn, fail, and co-learn. This is the person who's going to drive this. In addition, we want to sprinkle in a little bit of vulnerability and a lot of confidence, right? If you're going to be doing this, and hopefully some of you are that person, it's okay not to know where you're going to end up as long as you have some sense of the general direction that you're traveling. And it's okay to let students loose down a path that you take together, that you facilitate with them. So it's really important, and you are the first step. And again, if we talk about making and the maker movement and maker spaces, it's not about tools, and it's not about the space. It's really about an individual taking charge. I've got some good friends who are able to do some amazing things on extremely limited budgets. $200 a year for their entire school of 700 students. And they're doing amazing things because they have someone who's got the energy, who's got the willingness to go ahead and say, you know what, it may not be beautiful and it may not be laser cutters and it may not be 3D printers, but that's not going to stop me. I'm going to bring this on into my school. The second thing that is really, really important. While I had the privilege and opportunity to be building a maker space in an innovation lab in the school that I have, and in my new school, I have the opportunity, and I'm in the midst of building 3 of them, one for our elementary school, one for our middle school, one for our high school. Don't get fixated in with space. One of the things that one of my coworkers and I were talking about is, well, if we really take this to where this is going, isn't anywhere a makerspace? Isn't every classroom already a makerspace? In a lot of cases, a lot of the activities that you're doing in your classrooms are makerspaces, right? You do the movies, you do the green screens. We don't have to have a separate room with special equipment. Yes, it's nice for that equipment that you need, that's expensive, to have it in a central place where everyone can share it, because we're not going to be able at this point in time to afford 3D printers in every one of our classrooms. So it's nice to have that central space. But, I'm reminded of this particular example. This is a friend of mine, Jacob Lingley, who is a math teacher in Fredericton, New Brunswick. And he was at my first iteration of my workshops 2 summers ago. And this is what he came up with. And he's got a really great blog post. For $1,500, and that's for the cart and for all the equipment and tools that they have put in their cart, which includes hand tools, googly eyes, arts and crafts supplies, little bits, makey-makeys. They now have a mobile makerspace in their school. And that mobile makerspace enables them to take it into all of their various different classrooms for the activities or the units that are apt and open for some of that making. Because at their school, they are space tight. They don't have the opportunity to add new spaces or to take and repurpose spaces. So this is their solution. The MakerBot, so for about $4,000, they now have this mobile makerspace that they can now take where they want to go. So again, you don't need to think about space. And again, one of the things that was really important and that we were excited about when we got our first 3D printer, we actually put that in the learning comments at an intersection of hallways where every student in the school would be able to see the printing going on. We didn't put it in behind closed doors. We wanted to put it out front so that everyone would have an opportunity and everyone would see that magic and be turned on. And we would hear all of the ideas and the synapses. I mean, it was funny. You could hear the synapses just popping in students' heads as they were just watching this in amazement. So again, think about the space and taking it into the existing spaces that you have. If you have the luxury and if you have the budget to put in a dedicated space, that's great. But don't let it stop you. Step 3, you need to do some learning yourselves. And so if you, again, I didn't want to reiterate and bring in the Bible, Invent to Learn by Sylvia Martinez and Gary Steger, but if you haven't gotten a copy, you will want to get a copy if you're interested in moving in this direction. What I like about it, especially if you're needing to involve stakeholders and talk to them about why this is important, this is something that you want to do, why it's important for our kids. What I love about their book is that the first part of the book is about the pedagogies, and it gives you the arguments on why this is important, why we need to do this with our students. And only then, once they've laid that groundwork and put the scaffolding in place, do they talk about specific tools. But it's really about this scaffolding and pedagogy. To me, this is one of the books that inspires me almost all the time. This is The Art of Tinkering. It's a more expensive book. It's about $30 on Amazon on discount. It's from the Exploratorium, which is a hands-on museum in San Francisco. And in this book, there are inspiring stories of how artists and craftsmen are using all of these various tools of making in really cool and neat and unique ways. And one of the things I absolutely love about the book is that the book invites making on the book itself. There's conductive ink on the cover that if you attach a battery to it, you can put LEDs and grow all kinds of really neat things. And they did have a contest where people were to create creations on their book and send them on in. And if you ever get a chance to go out to the Exploratorium in San Francisco, it is an absolutely magical place. And if they do what they did last summer, it was my first trip, Thursday, if you're there on a Thursday evening, they have an adult-only evening from 5 to 9. So you really get a chance in those 4 hours to enjoy some adult beverages while you're exploring. It's really, really fun. For me, another piece that you'll want to make sure is in your toolkit is to subscribe to Make Magazine. This is the Bible of making. Dale Doherty has put together a great resource. It now comes out 6 times a year. It's got project ideas. And for me, it was what Popular Mechanics was when I was younger. It gives a lot of ideas, and even if the projects that they list in that particular volume and that particular issue aren't of interest to you, it will spur other ideas. Well, geez, I can take this kernel of an idea and sprinkle it with a little of that and put that into what it is that I learn. And again, we make these available in our labs to our students so that they can have the opportunity to understand and see and build those particular projects. So right now in our recipe, we've got someone who is willing. We've taken and we've dispelled that idea of space and hopefully broken that down. And we've started you on a journey of learning and learning about some of the different ways so that you can get inspired with some of the different resources. But we now again come. So the first ingredient's crucial. This last ingredient is the one which is essential. One of the things that we need to do is we need to go out and play. We have to provide ourselves space and permission to jump in and do this ourselves. It's okay. If you're not sure how to work a makey-makey, it's okay. Go to YouTube. Watch videos put together by kids. They will teach you. It's okay if it doesn't work out right the first time. It's okay. Share where you are in that learning journey and share in that process. Again, a lot of people like to talk about makerspaces, and the first thing that they'll say is, hey, makerspace, 3D printer, got to have one. And while part of me will acknowledge that, yes, a 3D printer is the sizzle that will sell your space, because it's absolutely wondrous and magical to watch something grow and develop that either you downloaded and it was really cool, or better yet, you designed or modified something that you downloaded. And it's really awesome to see that just be built right in front of your eyes. You know, it's almost like the blow molds in the Museum of Science and Industry that you used to slug the quarters in, and you'd see the molds just shut, and you'd smell the plastic as it's being injected, and at the end it was hot and it was warm, and it was just wondrous. You want to go ahead and do that. Where I would suggest that you all start is you start at a very low-tech, low-touch way. Start with cardboard. Cardboard is a plentiful, renewable resource that's easy to get. And one of the items that we highlighted in the Maker Playground was, as I see Judy Epke, I say make do, she says makey do. It really doesn't matter. These are hinges, and they're connectors, and they're plastic saws and aws for students to begin to design and build. And it's for you to begin to design and build things which are wondrous. Last year at Quest, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders in an after-school club built a geodesic dome, 20 foot in diameter, using make-do and cardboard. And talk about the learning and the cooperation that went with it. They each were working on their own section, and they had to figure out and make sure that when they were going to assemble it together, that they assembled it so that it would fit and line up. So there was a lot of conversation and communication to make sure that the scale was the same for everyone cutting. It was absolutely wonderful. Make-do or makey-do kits for a classroom set run about $130. That's really not all that expensive, but yet we can begin to unleash some of the possibilities and some of the potential. Another item that we highlighted over in the Maker Playground is squishy circuits. Squishy circuits enable us to make dough, which is either conductive or it's insulative, and we can now begin to build circuits with these particular doughs. Now, all of us can probably afford to go out and get flour, cream of tartar, and either sugar or salt. We mix it together and it makes this wondrous material that we can now attach batteries to and LED lights to and sound sensors and buzzers and all kinds of different things. And those electronic components aren't all that expensive. Note to self, as those of you who are taking notes, many Radio Shacks are closing. Many Radio Shacks that are closing have things that are on clearance sale. Do not pass go. Do go to your Radio Shack and clean them out of LEDs and motors and servos so that you can build this on up for yourselves and for your students. So squishy circuits, again, very low-tech, low-cost way to bring it into the classroom, and you can bring it in with the youngest of students. You know, we worked with it with kindergartners and had, older students, third and fourth graders, work with them to begin to do this. And as we begin to amp up a little bit larger, we can get into some of the other electronic circuit tools, whether it be makey-makeys, that enable us to take and have students begin to program, but then create interfaces. And as a teacher of computer science, one of the things that's the hardest thing to do is to keep enthusiasm and momentum for students to do programming, because the program does its thing and it displays something on the screen and that's all good. Now what do I do with it? But makey-makeys allow us to go out and build physical interfaces so that I can interact with that code in hard, tangible ways. Little bits enable me to connect and create circuits, and it allows me to create those circuits to do things. My favorite bit is the cloud bit. The cloud bit with the little bits enables me to connect and make something which is part of the Internet of Things. Now, for those of you who have your stakeholders, the Internet of Things discussion was in the November. That was the featured topic in the November issue of Harvard Business Review. All right, so it's really important that Harvard Business Review has highlighted it. Your administrators and stakeholders know about it, and now you can bring those experiences. So with my device, I can now control that little bit in through the network so that it will do neat and wondrous things. So, my beginning to test with the little bits and the cloud bit was that I created with a sound sensor and a counter and then connected to the little bit. We're having to leave the dog home a little bit longer. And so what we did is I created this circuit, and in this circuit, it will count the number of barks that the dog makes during the day. And if it hits a threshold of 5, working with if this, then that, it will then send me a text message to let me know that the dog barked more than 5 times. Right? So now when I go home and I see the dog, I can know if the dog had a stressful day. Right? Geez, honey, what was going on? Oh, there's a package out front. It was just the mailman delivering a package. Everything's okay. But we now have that ability to interact in new and exciting ways and open up those possibilities. And little bits are a little bit more expensive than our make-dos and our cardboard, but it, again, gives us the ability to begin to do a lot of things. Other tools that we can incorporate and include, little Arduinos and Raspberry Pis. And, one of my projects, I've always been interested in flight. One of my projects is and we've got a flying field out by my house. I'm going to build a glider, a remote control glider out of foam core. And I'm really excited. When I get a little bit of time, I'm going to start over spring break in 2 weeks. I've gotten the parts assembled and I'm getting it ready to build. And so I'm going to then build it. Again, it's just out of foam board. So that way when I crash it when I'm learning to fly, I can easily repair it. And just begin to do this. But again, it's my sense. I'm really excited about this particular project because I'm going to live the life that I'm asking my students to live. And I'm trying to live my life dangerously into the various different projects. So the fourth piece, the essential piece with this, is to take a chance yourselves. Begin to get involved, whether it's doing what my wife likes to make, chocolate chip cookies, right? I love when she makes chocolate chip cookies, or whether it has to do with electronics or wearables or whatever it is. Go out and try. Learn. Be willing to learn and unlearn what you do. You never know what's going to happen, and you never know how you're going to be transformed. And there's a chance that you can be transformed as well as I. So I want to thank you all very much. I know that we're wrapping up the conference. Thank you for coming to the very last session before the closing of the very last day, a spot usually reserved for someone who is just starting out. But again, I do want to thank you all for your time and for experiencing and having the chance to make and have a great rest of your year.